Thanks. Nice to see you on this wonderful day. We'll just commence with our committee prayer. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a team, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make the decisions that will affect the ratepayers, all of our citizens, staff and stakeholders of our district. And continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater benefit of our people and the Te Arua. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Thank you. Well, just before we get into the formal part of the meeting, councillors, so we're going to push quite hard to try and finish prior to 3 o'clock for this meeting. I hope we will. And we've got a roughly 45 minutes to maybe an hour to have a workshop on local water well done. So if you just, we'll probably have, I think, 15 minutes. We'll stop when we finish the meeting. We'll have 15 minutes for a break and then back in. We've got a couple of groups online that want to talk to us. So that's just the plan if it sort of suits everybody. Thank you very much for that. Any apologies today? Everybody's here. Thank you. Public forum, no advice as to that. Any notifications of matters not on the agenda? Councillor Sharon.
Thanks. With your discretion, I wouldn't mind an update on the programmed work for Route 52, the Pongaroa to Turumia, Alfreton, from one of the team, if that's possible.
I think that was the item you did email or something. We can pop that into transport, Hamish. Thank you. Yep. Make a note, Andrew. Yeah, Sharon.
Thank you.
Any declarations of conflicts of interest? Good to have a mover and a second for the minutes from last meeting, councillors. Councillor Steve, Councillor Peter, all in favour? Carry. Thanks very much. We'll flick through those page by page. Page 1. Page 2. 3. Page 4. Page 5. Councillors for that. We will move on to the reports in your hands, James. Thank you.
And good afternoon, Mayor Tracy and councillors. Nice to see you all. I will bring up the group team leads. So Andrew, in this case, is going to speak for the transport to start off with.
Welcome, Andrew, this afternoon. Thank you.
So I take the report as read, but there are a few probably crunchy discussions that I'm preparing myself for today in regards to some of the topics. But I suppose flicking through it in general, we are, I suppose, at the start of the new NLTP now, as of the 1st of July. That comes with a bit of uncertainty while NZTA work through their budgets and confirm everything. I understand that the final budgets for the nationwide land transport program is getting presented to the Waka Kotahi board this month, and we should have notice of the final budgets at the end of essentially, well, we're believing we've got them, going to get them at the end of this month. We are still waiting one of the work categories, which is the low cost, low risk program, valued at $5 million. And that's I suppose that's the last of the piece of the puzzle that we're starting to build. We've been given indicative funding figures to date for the various different work classes, which is the operations, the pothole prevention, and then walking and cycling, and the other ones, the other ones that's missing out. For the most part, our operations and pothole prevention is looking favourable in terms of what our bid was. The pothole prevention, obviously, with the focus from the government about fixing roads and getting things sorted, is done well. Our operations have been our operational side of things, which is the I suppose, general maintenance, the mowing, the spraying, bits and pieces have been pared back a little bit, but it's not unmanageable. But the one that has been flagged that we just got notice of in this last month is the footpath maintenance and renewals budget, which has taken a bit of a hit. Last NLTP, we received $1.6 million to maintain and renew the footpaths. This NLTP, we've got indicative funding of $648,000. As a result of the, I suppose, interest in getting on top of things like the driveway situations that have been going on for years, there was a bigger request placed in there. That saw us place in a $4 million request, which has been pared back basically to the maintenance only, which is, and then we've been cut on top of that from what was actually requested. So yeah, some fun conversations coming up, I dare say, in that space. And I suppose if there's any questions around that, we could take them now.
Take us to go, Councillor. Councillor Scott and Sharon.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the update, Andrew. This may be through to Hamish or through to yourself. With the footpath side, and we did have a bit of an early heads up that it was looking that way. Footpaths, constantly come up on our community surveys as being an area of concern for our ratepayers. Just wondering when we'll have a bit of an idea of what this drop might look like in reality. So, there's comments in there that there will clearly be a level of service drop. So wondering when we'll have a bit of information on what that drop might look like, and also if there's any plans on sharing that with our community. So I suppose the community knows the challenges that we're going to be facing in those areas. So I know we're quite early, but just wondering if we've got any thoughts on that yet.
So I wasn't part of the workshopping that led to the submission, but I suppose I have been on the peripheral of these conversations for a while now. My understanding is that historically we've been struggling to keep up on top of the maintenance, and then you add the driveways on top of it, it becomes a whole big issue. Based on I suppose what we received last NLTP, the $1.6 million, we were still seeing a deterioration of level of service with the footpaths. Now that we're basically at $1 million taken out of that, we're going to have make some pretty tough decisions if we stick with the budget that's been currently sitting there as it sits. Without having to go through, we haven't gone through all the, I suppose, information that's sitting in RAM right now to understand what the impacts will be fully. But I've got a few, I suppose, at this point in time, it feels like we're going to be only able to address the high priority safety issues in the network. When we had a meeting this morning within the office just to start looking at what the different faults were in bits and pieces. Largely it's coming down to the vehicle entrance ways. When you look at the, I suppose, direct safety related faults, where we've got potholes through the footpaths and bits and pieces, they are all the majority of them are showing on the driveways. So the decisions we're going to have to make essentially are, do we continue for the next 3 years in that space? Or do we do something different and move money from operational budgets and sacrifice in other areas essentially? Essentially, our investment advisor from Wakate pitched for the maintenance to be given as per request, and then it's got up above him, and essentially it's been cut back. And in the meetings I had with Horizons Regional Council the other day and with the other local authorities, is it's happened right across the board. The percentages are slightly different based on whether they were doing renewals or maintenance, but it's been a big hit essentially right across the walking, cycling, work class. So yeah, it is a little bit early to say what the end result is going to be. We have some theories on it, but at this point in time, we've basically instructed the operational teams we will start working towards the CRM faults, and we'll go and inspect them. And if they're not a safety related one, we will likely be passing on it or be left to continue until we've got some, I suppose, better ideas about how we're going to invest the budgets. Because if we're bringing money in, we're going to have to discuss about what else is going to be sacrificed.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I absolutely understand the constraints and early it is. Through Mr. Chair, through to Hamish. I suppose the second part of my question was more on how will we communicate with the community? I mean, if we are shifting even in the short term, which it sounds like straight away, we're going to have a bit of a level of service change. Have we given some consideration of sharing this so the community knows what constraints we're under as a council, the timelines, why perhaps it wasn't considered in the LTP?
Very Chair Kerry. So certainly comms will be the outcome of the work that the Alliance is going to do once it's been through the likes of the chambers, make sure that everybody's on the same page before we, I guess, go out with a definite answer to anybody. Yeah, so, but take your point.
Sharon?
Thanks, Chair. In the interest of timeliness, I mean, it's just an additional question following on from Councillor Scott, Andrew. So when these figures were first presented to you, what was the, oh goodness, we're not going to be able to do sense? I've written down driveways. I've got a sense that we'll focus on safety only. What is there any area across the district that's going to be hardest hit with these figures? At a really high level, I know all the detail will come, but we all have a sense when this email came out to us, we'll go, you know, this means we won't be able to go on.
I suppose from what I know of the footpath network, and like I say, I haven't walked. Coomera doesn't have many footpaths to walk around, so I know Woodville relatively well. I know that Dannevirke's got big wide AC footpaths. From a vehicle entranceway point of view, we've got 3 metre wide footpaths in Dannevirke, which if we're going to make some, I suppose, hard decisions, is if we were going to repair some of those ones because of their safety obligations, it may be looking to put a strip through the middle of it to allow for safe pedestrian passage, but not repairing the broader of it, because essentially the government's sending a signal they want to pare back the level of service and footpaths, and yeah. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just in relation to comms, I think I have put one small piece out in the mayoral column, and I'll probably do some more in the next mayoral column. I would like to write to Simon Bridges as chair of Waka Kotahi. I think we need to put something formally in writing so that they understand, as does the minister, what the impacts are to this community and these spaces, considering we've got mobility scooters and a lot of others that use those footpaths and are already experiencing difficulty. But my question really is, this is not just about footpaths, because this impacts also some of the walkways and maintenance that we do in those spaces, you know, how we're going to address some of that. So have you got a timeline where you will be able to bring that back to us, just so that we do understand those full impacts and all of the areas that it does cover?
So the initial, I suppose, data analysis around what's in the system can happen relatively quickly in terms of the fault severities that we've got in RAM. When we were looking through it some of this morning, some of the severities probably need reassessing in terms of what is considered a safe footpath versus what is not, and there's from the comments this morning, there was about 1,600 footpath faults in the system. A quick review of them, snapshot to get us to see where that sits in line of a must-do safety versus a safety issue that's going to appear in the next, say, few months versus one that could probably sit for another year or so and just still and sit there. So there is a bit of work in that space, and I suppose when we start reviewing it, the timeline around that will be the what we're finding is probably going to dictate a little bit based on what's there. I'd say we come next ICCM meeting, we should have a broader view of what that could look like, and we would put forward basically I suppose the maintenance intervention strategy for it, so we know what the budget. So if we've got 200 priority 5s now, we know what the repair cost would be. Whether repair is a full-blown fix the fault and so it never comes back again is the question. Is we can do a temporary patch up for the next, so I suppose we can patch the network for the next 3 years, or we can fix it properly and funnel money into some one or two faults. I think gut feeling is we're going to be doing patching for the next 3 years. So yeah, I'll try, I'll definitely get something back for the next ICCM meeting, because I know it's probably the biggest topic that's going to be discussed, given the, I suppose, the talk around footpaths, and because I've been turning up to these things since 2020, and I know that that's been one of the conversations around it. So.
Chicken Andrew regionally, so we were an 84% drop. What were some of the other districts and percentage wise from your meeting?
So I can't quite recall the different councils what they were, but I know there was one that had a 82% drop, and that was one of the small rural towns as well. Either it might have been Rangitikei when I think about it. There was another one that in the meeting that said that had a 65% drop, but it's coming down to the balance between maintenance and renewals. Across the board, if they, what I believe is we've had our entire renewals budget removed. The maintenance has been approved at a lower request. So yeah, without knowing what the balance between the other councils were, it's a bit hard to say that squarely, but yeah.
Thanks, thanks, Chair Kerry. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I guess most of the maintenance would be on tar sealed footpaths as opposed to concrete. So you're talking Danny Burke and Paetua in the main.
Councillors, yes. Oh, sorry. Mike.
For you, Chair Kerry. Andrew, thank you very much for that. That's good. I'm a bit out of touch. Can you give me, you said 1600 volts on footpaths. Can you give me an indication of what they are? I don't know. What?
Yeah, so footpath faults range from potholes, cracks in footpaths, which generally, so concrete footpaths, you get a lot of movement of the concrete slabs, and you get trip hazards essentially, roots that are pushing up footpaths here and there. But generally, it's come from what I'm seeing in the pictures that we've got in the system. It's driveways, potholes, broken, just damage from vehicles. Essentially, there's a lot of them, and they'll be the higher priority ones because they're the ones that haven't been largely. I suppose this NLTV was going to would council made a decision to actually start getting on top of those issues and start addressing them, whereas kind of going back to what was happening 3 years ago plus. One thing to say is that prior to in the last 2 NLTPs, I think Waka Kotahi have funded footpath maintenance repairs, whereas prior to that it was 100% funded by council. So they
Thanks, Andrew. Just carry on, shall we? That's so where were we up to?
So I suppose moving on from the footpath and the budget side of things is with the emergency works side of things that's been happening, and the new the NZTA policy for emergency works, we are starting to explore the makeup of the district essentially in terms of how we assess the network for usage, where we respond to, where we invest. Right now, it's only just putting information together so we can actually table a conversation around differential levels of service, if that's so desired, something that we want to adopt. But essentially, with emergency works, NZTA are pushing down the route of if it's hasn't got much use of the road, then should we be going fixing it like it has sometimes in some situations. In some districts, from the plans I'm seeing, it's potentially a state highway repair for what is a backcountry road that's only servicing stock, essentially. So we're building that picture up as right now. As of the new NLTP, we're moving to the one network framework approach, which is basically not just looking at vehicle count, but looking at place and use. So that's a process that's supposed to occur over the next 3 years to actually improve that. We're trying to fast track that and get some sort of some easy wins now. So we're prepared for the next storm event. So next time, I suppose the last two years we've been responding to returning the same level of service to the district as if it was example was for Kaisai Bridge. We had a bridge there, we returned the bridge back in place. If it was a 3 metre wide unsealed road, we will return it as a 3 metre wide unsealed road. This is basically looking at saying, well, do these roads actually need to be the same level of service as what they were prior to storm damage? So we'll have a big effect around the funding that comes from emergency works, and it will have potential for public input. We're just putting together the data now so we can actually table it as a conversation. So.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Can you give us a timeline for, excuse me, report on the deregistration of some roads, or the change in level of service for roads where they are servicing only one owner, and particularly those with bridges? I see there's no exit roads with bridges and so on mentioned here, but no date as to when we might be having those discussions.
Previous conversations around some of the low use roads that we've got in the district started with Angora Road a couple of years ago, where the forestry had basically over a course of a month had basically destroyed the road. We pushed back and we closed it to general access due to safety concerns. There is the other road out by Herbertville that has been the council maintenance has stopped on it. We've got basically signs up now saying that it's no longer maintained. When I was going through that process, there is very little documented process for going from a formed road essentially back to a paper road, because that's essentially what we're looking to do. I suppose historically it's never been the thing to do because you maintain what you've got, and it's sort of like a degradation of your network. So I've brought that up with the Horizons, was it Ridge Group? Well, not the Ridge Group, but the Bragg Group the other day, and they're all about in the same position about that. There's actually no process. So I'm going to be pushing that with, I suppose, the local councils in the Horizons region to sort of get a bit more information. I am aware that within other councils there are roads that have had long-term no council maintenance on them, and that's probably the simplest path to go down in terms of getting something moving straight away, because we can do that now essentially. It's notifying the public that that's happening. In terms of actually handing back bridges, that's a bit of and the likes, that's a bit of a different category, because like I say, there's no clear process to follow to enable that. Watch this space, because it's going to need a bit of research essentially.
If we decommission a road and someone wants to use it, then and the bridge falls down, well, we don't care, do we? We're not going to replace it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but there must be some. It's a bit like the old Gorge Road, the Whakakatahi going through this revocation process, where they just hand it over to whoever and stop it at a certain point. Now, surely we can do the same thing. No doubt there'll need to be some consultation with affected parties, but must have been done before.
So we can stop a road, and that's a process in itself. We do a lot of that with right across Rossmead. We've just done one of the road repairs we did on Taikariri Road. We've moved the road corridor and we've stopped the old portion of the road, and that's taken up probably 4 months back and forth in terms of the negotiation. The difference between what we're trying to do in terms of ceasing maintenance and is I suppose it essentially comes down to we're closing a public asset forever if we stop a road. My view is that it's better, it's less the least past the resistance is to turn it back to a paper road. We don't know what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20, 50 years. So if we're making decisions on stopping a road now, we're basically doing that in forever. Whereas if we turn it back into a paper road, it still has the ability to. And that's I think it's the balance. It's the process from going from a formed road to a paper road is not documented and clear. We can stop a road, yeah, definitely we can stop a road, but it's got ramifications in terms of what that means for the broader access. Example, Rakaitai, there's 4 titles of that bridge services. So essentially we're making a decision for all those 4 titles, and we can't stop the road because we've got to provide access to it. We can turn back to a paper road, but we can't stop the road because, well, we can, but we wouldn't necessarily get across the line in terms of approvals from NZTA and the Minister of Transport who needs to sign it off to it.
So what's the process? I mean, we've talked about it several times, haven't we, this whole subject? So where are we at in deciding what we're going to do with various roads? And or when will that happen? When will we discuss certain roads?
So once we've developed the information in terms of the road hierarchy and identified the needs, the likes of where the bridges are at the end of these roads, we'll bring that back to essentially this forum to have a discussion around what the desires are from it. I mean, I essentially know what you're asking. Once we get the data in place, we then know the scale of the problem, and then we can start making decisions around it. But essentially, the short-term work to bring the information you're looking for, I was trying to get it into this report, but I didn't quite get the numbers quite square, and I had more questions come back than what it was actually asking. So next ICCM report, at least I'll have the no exit bridges, the bridges on the no exit roads at the end of the road identified, and so we can know if it's 50 bridges, if it's 10 bridges, if it's 5 bridges, if it's the next decision from that is what does councillors want us to do with that information, and how we, because that's going to need consultation with the landowner, the affected parties, and it's how that process runs and who owns that process and who wants to front the awkward conversation from the get-go, essentially.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. We are doing one. The McGibbon Bridge is probably a good example of where we're actually going through the process a little bit. We're just putting some numbers together around the final costs of that, but that's kind of like set up to work through quickly, and hopefully we have that done by the sorted out by the end of I suppose this calendar year. Yeah, there's too many questions, I suppose, right now to give you very clear. This is what we can do.
The next meeting of this committee, you'll have the extra roads with bridges. That's a start. Okay, nothing's here.
Question one.
Through you, Chair. Don't know who to ask this question, but I fully take on board what the previous councillor has just asked. However, we've brought in a differential roading rate for some of these land users, particularly forestry, and we're looking at charging them extra for the land use and then walking away from their road. Is that essentially what we're looking at?
Through you, check you out. I'll take a stab at that one. I think so. The work Andrew and the team will be looking to do is highlight the roads that aren't having any use. So you're not going to have a logging or any sort of industry at the end of one of the roads that Andrew's going to identify. We're looking at the roads that have 1, 2, maybe 3 cars a day maximum, and a $1 million bridge at the end, because that's sort of the risk that we're having to manage. So thank you.
I guess, Andrew, really, when all through item 4 of this is going to collect a lot of this information. This is what, isn't it? This is what, and so at the end of that, we're going to have the information and then consider some decisions, really, isn't it? Or but it isn't easy because I've been involved with a couple of these. It's no easy matter to start shutting roads. That's right. That's part of the job, but. We'll wait for the next meeting and have a bit of the numbers next meeting, hopefully, Andrew. Okay, thanks.
Andrew, with next.
So yes, I suppose beyond that, is there any other questions in the roading space? Yeah, that's not related to emergency because we've got that coming up as well. So, yeah.
Perhaps here might be your question, Councillor Sharon. Would you like to Route 52? While we're in roading?
Dealt with, would I? Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Andrew, just to provide the context, I'd copied Hamish into, I did a wee trip from Pongaroa. I think we got as high as what they call the summit, Gundy's Road or something or other. And so with a couple of locals who were concerned about the water encroachment, the damage that was being done, the slumping that was occurring, they appreciate that, you know, there's been a heck of a lot of work happened on the other side of Route 52 and also River Road and Coast Road. But the question to me was, where is it in the program to actually start addressing? Because we've spent a lot of time looking at the AMPs and trying to enhance the priority of drainage. And it was clear to me, and I'm no engineer, that, you know, the water encroachment, particularly in one area, there was almost a lake that we drove through. So the question was being asked, where in the next wee while is the programmed maintenance for that piece of road? I wasn't able to tell them. I said I would ask that question of the team and have the opportunity to speak to it here. Thank you, Chair Carey. So this is from Pongaroa through to Alfreton. So yeah. So just keep on heading and you'd end up at Alfreton. But we got as far as, I think they call it the summit. The locals know that, but it's Gundy's Road. And so it was about 15 Ks that we travelled. I counted 22 water encroachments, and this is 2 days after they'd had the rain and one big lake. Definitely impacting out there.
I say a bit of a stab at this one because I know there's been a lot of conversation around programs around the Route 52 side of things, particularly going, I suppose, on the back of the project we got funding approval from the shovel ready side of things, with the view that maybe start developing that and looking south. In that specific area, I know we've been trying to do last rehabilitation program for the last year. We were working towards doing more work down in that area and pushing south essentially, which we couldn't get it across the line from a cost benefit analysis in terms of actually the work we wanted to do, because the roads are quite narrow in a lot of the areas, and actually to do the job properly, we need to actually invest a lot of money in actually the earthworks and drainage side of things, which that always comes down to our low cost, low risk program. The pavement itself can be funded. It's the failing retaining walls and the culverts that are undersized and the earthworks that have been done and the tree removal that's got to be done to facilitate the upgrade how we would like the upgrade to be done. So there was one that we were looking at last that was supposed to be done last financial year, but when we went through the design process and got to it, it was like we just couldn't get the numbers to stack up. On the back of Cyclone Gabriel, we have made a bit of an attempt to try and deal with some of the hazardous trees that were restricting those issues as well. So we're sort of, I suppose, long-term got a plan to try and enable those works to happen at a more cost-effective manner. In terms of the drainage side of things, we have had this significant bump in our drainage budget for this NLTP, which is going to start focusing on those undersized culverts and probably some of the challenges which are causing the lakes, I suppose, that you're mentioning. When you do find them, it's good to know where they are, because when you look
What got them sending in the photo to you?
Yep.
Went through into your notes.
And then in terms of the low cost, low risk program, there is also an allowance in that for, I suppose, resilience work that is associated with some of the one site in particular we're looking at. We had about probably 200 metres retaining wall that was all starting to fall over because we hadn't had budget to maintain it. We have requested money to start maintaining our structures in this NLTP, which we have been peaked back, but I do believe we still got a bit of budget to start addressing some of those things, and it's where the priorities are essentially. Very much aware of
18 months, 2 years. I mean, I'm trying to manage the
drainage side of things.
Yeah.
We expect to be, if we this NLTP cycle, we should get on top of half our I suppose culvert issues where you've got aging culverts in poor condition, and some of the undersized ones with the broader emergency works and resilience type works. There will be work going into the next NLTP as well in terms of continuing that drainage upgrade side of things. In terms of the pavement side of things, in terms of pavement condition, NZTA have clamped down quite a bit on what gets approved and what doesn't. And given we've got such a high funding rate, we're sort of at the bit of the mercy of what NZTA think is right. And you look at some of the, I suppose, stuff that's been happening on the state highway in terms of when they would do a rehab and repair, that thought is coming into our district, and that's the battle we've got. But I suppose we are looking at this, we've got a good budget this year to do some of this work, and it's making sure that we're just, I suppose, targeting the right places. we know the work's out there. We know there is need. And when I suppose the stars align, essentially, when you've got your drainage, you've got your rehab, and you've got some earthworks components. Probably the biggest thing for that area, for the narrow areas down there, is that low cost, low risk program. If we get cut back significantly on that again, like we have with the footpath side of things, then it changes the tone. So that should be known next month.
Yeah, Sharon.
Finishing off the roading then, Andrew, I just had a couple of things. I was just going to mention, you did bring up at another forum a couple of days ago about you've had a bit of success with the land stabilisation project on the side of the road. You might just like to mention to councillors where that's gone.
So I do have a bit of a presentation to run through that. Do you want to do that now, or
I've got that for later.
either so you can do it now, or on the back of the emergency works one.
We'll do the question. We'll finish this. And any other questions? The only other matter I had, Andrew got put
Here was, we'd had a bit of stuff pop up on the radio stations, and we mentioned it at, I think, me Tracy's meeting. In Danny, we've got the cones, road cones and things down Victoria Avenue. But you had sent quite a comprehensive email to us, and I'm not sure whether all councils have received, more than councils. Yeah, so, that's right. So it wasn't quite as simple as everyone was complaining, but it's about road safety and issues developing from the Adelaide Road walkway, really, isn't it? So, in fact, the other issue that popped up with the Adelaide Road walkway was spraying. That's popped up a couple of questions, and I think that might be sitting under that footpaths budget, really, isn't it? So perhaps that can be looked at when we get to that, isn't it? And I think that was all I had noted for transport. Councillor Shearer.
Just as a follow-on question, Kerry, because I've been reflecting on, I'm like Kerry and the other northern ones get all this abuse about why all those cones on Victoria Ave. I understand the safety reasons and the thinking that's going on to a more permanent solution, but I'm curious to understand if the process at the start, way at the start, and I think Mayor Tracy knows exactly what I'm alluding to, if that had been done differently, we wouldn't necessarily have had to instigate this this technique to ensure the safety of those pedestrians, would we?
Yeah, I suppose there's
Was the goalpost changed, Andrew, in the meantime?
the goalpost hasn't changed. The balance is probably the question is around we've started at the far end and working backwards to the problem, whereas the problem is essentially for these areas is those narrow bridges. If that's the first problem that's dealt with, then the rest of it's easy.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I'm saying that is when we're talking along the likes of the Lindau Trail, we can build a footpath out to X point, but then we get into the issues with the narrow section. So if you can't sort that issue out first, it's a waste of time doing a lot of the other stuff. And I suppose that's the balance we're talking about. I mean, community development, that's great. People want to build. I mean, I like going out and doing bits and pieces for the community bits and pieces, but you need to kind of have the strategy sorted. And I suppose it's, yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah, through you, Chair Kerry. So in essence, we should really, they did the job and then found out the reason that you couldn't. So if you could, you know what I mean, in simplistic terms, you have a look at a map, there's a one-way bridge. You say to the people, great idea, but you can't go down that road because of A, B, and C. Now that they've done the job, and now we've got the cones because of A, B, and C. So, and I don't think if you don't get it, you don't miss it. Now they've got it, it'll create probably a great array on Facebook or whatever these stupid platforms are, but you know what I mean? So what I think going forward for our benefit would be we'll stop it before it starts. And I think that's what you just said in another way. you know, go down the roads that can, because there's a lot of roads everyone can walk on. But because this, you can't go down that one because A, it's cost preventative, and B, road cone heaven, you know, and on it goes. But there's still a lot more roads we can go walking about on. And more.
It's very much when this, I mean, that where that footpath's been built, the reason it's on Victoria Ave is because I think it was the alternative, the road north had one of the big water mains coming down. So we pushed that got pushed back, and no, we can't do that one because of it was going to have a significant impact on the ability to maintain the procedure of main supply into Dandenberg. That got then pushed into the next over the street because say the community development pieces here. So you want to, I mean, half our district is probably built on community development in the sense when it comes down footpath and pieces, and now the health and safety side of things is caught up with it. It's coming hard to do it, but I suppose it's either the decision to jump in early and lead those developments, or put something in place that prevents that puts the onus very much back on the people that are proposing it. So there's two ways it's going to get essentially. We could put a bridge, a pedestrian footbridge across that bridge, next to the bridge, and it would sort out the safety issue, and we could maintain the bridge as it is. But that comes with investment, and who's going to fund the footpath bridge? And if that was if we could, I suppose, shape that conversation with the boards, community boards, maybe that would be the first development they do. Is, well, yep, we can support the footpath, but this must be the starting point, which would be addressing the issue of the bridge. I mean, going back to a single lane bridge going back to a right of way on that bridge is not a complicated thing. It's a bit of line marking and bits and pieces. What we're doing here is probably enabling. It's setting the tone for what other things happen, because like I say, when this bridge, and it was put on the Facebook post the other day, there are other bridges in the district that have got the same conditions, and particularly there were people there who posted basically saying, oh, what about this one? And what about this one? Now, as a council, we know them. We're actually liable for these people walking onto bridges and bits and pieces. So it's like we're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, a little bit in some of the space. So
Thanks, Andrew. Peter will just.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Andrew, if you took away the cones and just put up a sign saying no pedestrians on the bridge, people can choose to ignore the sign or not.
I'd have to run that one past Jessica. Be respected.
It's not, there isn't that much traffic on that road. It's not like it's in the middle of Auckland or Wellington. Pedestrians, you can look down the road, it's fairly clear both ways. You can see the cars coming on it. But you've got to be sensible about it.
Yeah. I suppose the trouble is when we start looking at those type of scenarios, there are rules and around those things. And then the email that I think sent through talk about shared use zones and bits and pieces. And so if we know we've got pedestrians going to that bridge in this current situation, we're knowingly placing pedestrians at risk. So hence the liability sits with us if there was an incident. We know a problem, we're obligated to do something about it. Changing back to a priority of way system, that sorts out the immediate issue, because in its current, and why we've got the cones in place right now is because it should be the guidance in the background driving these things is that shared use. So thinking the Napier, in the middle of Napier, we've got the road going through in the brick area when you're in the middle of Napier, that's called a shared use zone. And so they've got a speed restriction of like 20 kilometres an hour from it, and cars are expected to give way to pedestrians. So by default, that's been what's been created through the creation of this footpath. And so it's how we manage that risk. And let's say we know about the risk, therefore we're obligated to do something about it. And it might be very minimal. I mean, it might be, while we've got a full set of cones out there right now, that's because we don't actually understand the risk, because we don't know how many pedestrians are going across it. It might, for all we know, it might be 1 a day, it might be 50 a day, it might be 100 a day. And the decision is sitting in terms of that risk sits with our team, then it sits with me, and then it goes up to Hamish, and then it sits, so it's a shared risk, and it's who's going to put their name onto the, yep, happy to go and put pedestrians in it. And it's like, well, I'm not going to go to jail for the fact that I said, yeah, okay, let's go and do it. So that's where we're balancing. And this is the world we live in, I suppose. And
You have a sign saying, no second crossing it, and they do. Then you can sue them for crossing it, but they don't.
I think we baited them by putting a footpath up to the bridge and then telling them to stop it there just before they go over it. So,
I think we might stop that debate. Not much point applying a Whittle solution to Victoria. But it's a lot.
Use and quite a lot of high-speed vehicle stuff goes through there. Unwanted high-speed vehicle travel. It is quite a dangerous spot there, actually. And there has been a reasonably serious accident a few years ago back there. So good luck on doing some investigation.
Any more transportation questions, Councillor? You want to finish your landfills? Can we do that in?
so that's the transport part of it. I do the music side of things, which on the fact that we've got 3 quarters one in front of it. So I'm happy to debate.
Carry on doing the 3 quarters?
Yep.
Okay. 3 quarters, we'll do that part. Which is, I think, Roger going to front that us. Thanks. Afternoon, Roger.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
How are you? Good, thank you.
Tracy, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, Roger, we're just debating timing and Andrew's presentation, but we might just leave Andrew's presentation to the end of this report, see what the time's like. So back to you anyway now.
I'll move quickly then, Mr. Chair. How about
I don't think it's in too quick.
limit the number of questions?
Yeah. Good luck.
I'll take the report as read, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things to add, or a couple of developments. Firstly, the Eketahuna number 1 reservoir. The outcome of that initial assessment and the remediation work indicates that those 2 timber tanks are in much better condition than we originally anticipated. So we had funding in year 5 to replace those, but that is no longer necessary. So we'll continue to get them inspected probably every 4 years as a recommendation. But at this stage, it looks like they will get another at least 10, 15 years, possibly longer. But I think the regular maintenance and inspection is the critical aspect to it. Secondly, just for an update in terms of staffing, the recruitment update that I provided. Unfortunately, the water and wastewater operations manager declined the offer that we made. So it looks like we'll need to go out to market again to try and fill that role. Quite a challenging role to fill given the level of expertise and skills we're looking. Those are the 2 updates I wanted to provide.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Why did that person turn down the job, please?
It was personal circumstances. I can't go into any detail, but unfortunately it just didn't fit in with his personal circumstances.
Scott and Sharon, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just got 2 quick questions with the question. Just the first, when you're looking at the consents and the compliance, so hopefully just a quick question. You mentioned the moderate non-compliance in Eketahuna. I just wanted to double check that that's the same non-compliance that's previously been reported, or is that a new issue that has not yet been reported through?
It's a new issue, so it's on the basis of the reports that we have to complete on an annual basis, and Horizons have now provided us feedback on those annual reports.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that. I assume we'll be getting some detail on that non-compliance if it hasn't been reported as of yet at some point.
Yeah, we can provide additional information, but essentially it's just because we haven't met the consented timeframes. So that's why we've been given a non-compliance.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just my second question goes into the recruiting for some of these roles, and probably through you to Hamish, without, of course, looking at any specifics. But it's notoriously difficult for us to find some of these highly skilled roles, which no doubt makes your job and the team's job much harder. Out of curiosity, have we given any thought or consideration to working with some other councils to share a role with some of these, some of this high level of expertise? Other councils are probably having similar challenges with recruitment and saying, hey, we'll do 0.5, can you do 0.5? And we might be able to offer a different package to them for being able to do so, because I know that wouldn't be ideal, but there is such a shortage of this skill around, and I'm just wondering if there's any thought to being a bit more creative to try and fill these gaps.
Good afternoon, everyone. Through you, Chair Kerry. Yeah, it's certainly something that we've at a CE level been discussing quite a lot, even in recent times. And I think if you look at the local water done well models, it's probably trying to address a lot of these issues through those efficiencies. So one thing that we've identified through that is that the financial benefits aren't massive, but some of the other operational efficiencies through those shared services and able to provide a different sort of structures on is probably where we'll get them. At the moment, everyone's water team's under the pump in terms of being able to release any resources to do anything additional. They're holding on to them like anything at the moment. So I've certainly had discussions with CEs and even a couple of Hamishes from other councils as well. If we get really stuck though, they are absolutely open to providing some level of support for us and vice versa. So we've got that commitment amongst the CEs and at the GM level.
Sorry. And then Scott.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Roger, a question to you, or maybe even Raj. The 5.3.3, the water supply, the impounded supply. In your timeline, you talked about having hearings in November, but I've circled the deliberations and the final decision. From memory, and there's been a lot in there lately, Raj, have we factored in anything for a budget decision for that time for impound supply? I mean, if we go through this process, which you've well and truly outlined there, Roger, we obviously have some hearings and discussion, but did we factor anything into a budget for? I thought we did, but I'd hate to get to November, 25th of November, and we ain't got any money to do anything, was it?
Through your chair, the intention is that in the current LTP budget, I think we've included some amount of work specific to Denver impounded supply. The intention for us to have the consultation timeframe in those timeframe is to fit into our annual plan process. So as part of the process, if we identify, I guess, a change to what's in the LTP, then I think we'll use the annual plan process to engage in consultation. That's how we target to align.
I was just worried that we'd sit, it's in concrete, but then I forgot about the Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just make it quick. This might be to Brian or to you. With the staffing thing, because I'm a bit worried about you guys getting burnt out. Is there a thing in process in the council going in on your sides that you're doing an apprenticeships scheme or somewhere, so we are future proofing our systems?
We brought in a water cadet or actually a wastewater cadet. So we are looking to bring people in at the bottom to ensure that we can get people qualified. But much harder at the higher level roles to achieve that. And we do have real challenges with getting people qualified through the new or the disruption to the tertiary institutions and Te Pūkenga. So that hasn't helped the situation at all and that's obviously a national challenge that we face.
Just a quick supplementary. Yes, I think Brian mentioned that, Roger, that you're not getting burnout, your teams.
We're under quite a bit of pressure. I'll admit that. Just the sheer volume of work that we're trying to manage at the moment. Yeah, especially a couple of the staff.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just to, I guess, highlight what Roger's just said in regards to Te Pūkenga, it was something that we discussed with the Manawatu Standard this morning at the Woodville water treatment plant, just around the challenges, because you can actually only work in that space and study in that space if you're employed by a council, and we're just sort of moving staff around. So it is something that they were keen to follow up as well. So it is a real challenge that needs to be highlighted.
Thanks, councillor. There's no more water. Roger, I just had one, not really a question, but a comment. I just wondered, with Rationale's involvement, consultancy with us at the moment, and they were obviously involved with water metering, but they do seem to be getting involved across a wider area. So I don't need an answer now, but I was just interested in how much work or what's the total brief of their work for us in the water sense, and are there some budgets? Just a bit interested in that, but doesn't need an answer right now. But
yeah, I can comment on that. I can't talk to you about specific budgets and exact figures, but we have a number of contracts with Rationale. Probably the most significant one is the support of Chris French at a strategic level, providing advice on, for example, the sludge strategy, the universal water metering. So really drawing on his expertise and experience. But Rationale are also helping us, or will be helping us with the completion of the water services delivery plan. So we'll need to put that together. And we've also got to deliver a demand management plan to Horizons for the 1st of October. So they're supporting us with that as well. So they are supporting in a number of areas, but we've got contracts covering that.
sorry, Roger, and they are doing some work with us at the impounded supply too. Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, they've completed an independent review of the impounded supply that we received last week. So yeah, looking at the whole scheme, not just at the dam itself, but from the inlet right through to the reservoir above Dennyberg. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Roger. Any more questions? Thanks very much, Roger. We'll move on to.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Right, thank you. Oh, you're on the stage. Thank you. Good afternoon, Joe. Thanks for your time. Been a busy lady too, by the looks. So we'll just take the report as read, and you can make any comments to what's been happening.
So
Not too big.
so good. Monday's weather wasn't helpful, of course. Yeah, that was a stressful, bit of a struggle day, but yeah, the team pulled through, and the best part was the driver was actually keen to go again at the end of the day. I couldn't believe it. Picked more up by hand than he did with the truck.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, Joe, congratulations on the work that you've done to keep recycling moving smoothly, coming up with creative ways to make sure that that level of service is maintained. So I know there was a bit of talk out in the community, a bit of chatter. Once that was clarified and people actually saw what's being done, that dissipated straight away. So I just wanted to thank you for that and say congratulations to you and the team. My question, Mr. Chair, is actually probably through you to Hamish, potentially. And it's really just about the contract change happening so quickly. And my question is, within the solid waste area or within other areas, is it usual to have a contract with a key supplier with only 5 weeks notice period attached to it? Is that, do we have other risks within that area, or was it this contract in particular with such a short time frame?
Through you, Chair Kerry. So in general terms, there'd been more notice. This contract obviously didn't last the full term, which was 7 years or so. All going to plan, we would have planned 6 months out what the transition was going to be. In this case, they came to us with a date. We determined that we could put the pieces together in time. So we agreed with their proposed finish date, and so that's by negotiation.
Councillor.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Yeah, well done. It must be really hard on the team having to quickly organise to get this all sorted. And I did felt for you guys on Monday when all the bins were just on the ground, and I was thinking you need 2 people to do that job instead of your normal 1, which that would have been really hard. So I'm just thinking going forward, this is going to save us costs, but in the interim, like with having to hire extra trucks and that because we can't get them yet, is that like break your budget, or how's that looking?
Initially, no. It's actually, I don't know where it will all completely land, but it is very close to mark. We've actually moved to taking Southern Transfer Station refuse over to Bonnie Glen landfill, which is actually a saving in itself. Utilising, of course, that truck returning over Rangatiki Way. So its return trip is actually saving us an amount on the tonnage rate. So it's a bit of give and take. Yeah, swings and roundabouts, and I think it will actually end up landing, particularly the curbside, I believe will land close to or under the contract cost.
Chair Kerry, slightly tongue in cheek. Well done, Joe. But when I first saw that trailer, I wondered whether the Tararua Alliance had given up their barbecue. And
good.
Well done. Well done.
We might be using that in summer as our secondary.
Bit of innovative thinking, I think, Mr. Chair.
Looks like everyone's pretty happy. Thank you very much for that, Joe. And obviously your hard labour has been appreciated around the table. So thank you very much for that.
That's right.
Councillor, thanks, Hamish's report. I think there's someone to move and second. Proceed to that. Councillor Scott and Councillor White. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you all. Right. So, Andrew, we're going to just in your hands for this little bit of a presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. So just touching through the, I suppose, the report first, is there any questions from the actual emergency works report before I launch into the land stability stuff? There is one correction I need to make, and I have mistakenly mislabeled the at 3.6, the letter was written to Simon Bridges, the NZTA board chair, not Simeon Brown, the Minister of Transport. The S and the B and the various roles they've had in the past keeps confusing me, but Hamish thankfully corrected that on the back of I think advice from somebody else. So yep, that's the only correction to the report, but yeah, if you would, without any questions, I can launch into land stability stuff.
Presentation, Katie.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just, 5.3, the planting of trees on some of the slopes above roads. You'd be looking at planting like manuka or something like that, not pine trees. Been down that road before.
Touch on the land stability stuff. Yeah, it's
Or something that's, not going to create an issue in 28 years' time.
Yes, we hope for that pine situation. Questions? Right, so this there's been in development for a little bit now, based on the very much what Councillor Johns has asked, on the back of, I suppose, a number of, my time in roading, and you look at what trees cause us problems around the district is all the large pine trees. Many of those trees that are around the district on road reserve were planted following Cyclone Bowler, when they had unstable land and they decided, let's plant some pine trees on it to, first of all, do some land stability, but also create some revenue streams for council. Lo and behold, it costs a lot more to harvest trees these days than what it probably did when they were planted. And now the burden of those big pine trees are now coming home to roost. And now they're our hazardous trees that we don't have the money to get rid of. So I suppose on that theory, through the different projects I've been involved with, identifying the fact that trees are good around the roadside because they do help stabilise the bank. On the back of it, making sure that we've got our operation within the road corridor. We don't have much effect on broadly into the land side of the private land side of things. So on the back of the Route 52 project, we're doing a lot of work with landowners in that space, and they were quite willing for us to get up and get into some upslopes and downslopes to solve some problems, as well as they're keen to start planting plants as well because of the, I suppose, the carbon credit side of things. There's actually value for it in them as well as they're identifying the fact that when this land moves, it's the ones on Route 52 particularly that I've been dealing with, they understand that the issues that their land is causing to the road is impacting them from a actual road usage point of view. So bringing that together, we've come up with the Tararua Land Stability Project. So I'll just run through this quickly, considering what the time is, and keen to have a good discussion about it after. Click.
Doesn't work, I can just flip through.
So the problem, we've got a lot of steep hilly country, and out on our eastern coast, the land is all clay. It's pretty eroded, highly erodible, and in a storm, it falls down onto the road. That also happens on the downslope as well, whereas the land erodes, it falls down, and we end up with dropouts. So the opportunity is to establish some plantings on these banks, and start trying to stabilise this land. When you look at it from just a roading perspective, we don't have the money to go and do what the scope of the project is. So on the back of a number of conversations we've been having around the place with the stakeholder group, following Cyclone Gabriel, Horizons are very keen to be planting trees on private property to stop erosion. So they've got what's called the SLUI program, and that is essentially right across the district, and they're already planting trees. So kind of the blueprints there. On the back of it, all the other conversations that we're having with Mitch in the recovery team is we've got MSD funding available to get people into work for job schemes and bits and pieces, and you put all that together and you think, well, here's a whole bucket of money that all these government entities are already funding, that we can put it towards things for the road reserve, and that'll benefit the road reserve. Not only does the government funding going to something that's, well, I suppose it's putting the funding into something that has more ongoing benefits than what it would be if they're all doing it in isolation. So hence the project. With the view that this is actually going to reduce costs to council over time with the reduction in slips and dropouts and bits and pieces if we get it right. So that's the opportunity. Get some trees on the upslopes and the downslopes to stop the land from coming onto the road reserve or stop falling away from the road reserve. What we do, we build resilience across the network. We reduce the loss of access. We can support farmers through the likes of the Salui program to stabilise their land, and it is low cost for Tararoa residents, if not net no cost to Tararoa if we can get it right. So this is, I suppose, where my thought process has started, is when we started scoping for the Route 52 project. I'd done all the work in sort of late 2019 to get my head around the project and scope it out. And I came back from the Christmas break and turned up to what is seen on the bottom photo there. A big crack at the road that wasn't there when we did the scoping. So I was like, here we go, just another problem. As I suppose we've been progressing the project, these type of faults have been quite clear as in why they're being caused. And as I click through it, you'll see some scenarios rise. So this is the same piece of road. Might be a little bit hard to see what's going on, but you know. This is from aerial imagery from 1948, I believe. So you can see the road. It's particularly the bit. So you come from the left, around the dog leg, and then back, and the little bit of a wiggly bit in the picture there is that's that site there. You look at in the 70s, the road's been realigned, and essentially that's been through cut to fill, where they've filled in a bit of a gully and put the road straight through. So that piece of road there, where that dropout is formed, is essentially old cut to fill material that has now eroded and is trying to essentially return to its natural condition. The fact that there's no trees there is part of the problem. And if we then look at what it looks like now, we've got two bits of road there that were cut to fill. We've got the bit on the, actually we've got some arrows spawning soon. So you've got the eastern bit and the southern bit. One has trees in the downslope and one doesn't. Vis-a-vis, trees stop erosion around the roads and stop dropouts, because down the road, we're not having any issues. It's got a culvert discharging through it, the same as the one that's failing. The difference is the fact that one's discharging into trees, one's not. That was the little line that just came up the old course of the road. So there was a few little wiggles back and forth into it. And that's the target area we're looking at. So if you can see just to the right of those yellow, where those arrows terminate, you'll see the gully that is all planted in willow and poplar and all sorts of things. The Morgans, who owns the land, they did that about 30 years ago. If they'd done the other gully 30 years ago as well, we probably wouldn't have a $500,000 dropout that we're trying to repair right now. So that's the theory behind it. And I think the reason this was a good concept site, because we've got one issue here, we've got case and proof here. The concept side of things that we've been working through is to see if we can get it funded without having to put council funds essentially into it and get the landowner buy-in, which essentially all the ducks are aligned, the stars are aligning and everything seems to be working out. So I'll further touch on that. So you can see the downslopes there. You can see the trees on the left and the eroding slope on the right.
Andrew?
Yep, still all Morgan. So this whole area is Morgans, and they're in line with the Salui program bits and pieces. So it's a good trial site. So that's the land. What we've, let me just. So the green area, that's the planted area on the downslope with water discharging on it. The red area on the top half of the page, that's the downslope with no planting but water discharging through it, particularly on the left-hand side. And then the red on the bottom side of the picture, is not the southern side, it's the bottom. For the purpose of the picture, the southern side of the road, that's the road reserve that we've got, essentially high risk vulnerable areas that are causing us either slips from the top slope or dropouts from the bottom slope. Those slips, every time we've had probably 5 over the course of the Route 52 project, and then obviously Cyclone Gabriel, which I'll exclude because that was just a disaster everywhere. Every time we go and clear one of those slips, it costs us about $5,000. So the thought is, if we can get on top of those slips at a minimum, it's going to start saving us saving us money. If we can, the biggest win is if we can get on top of those dropouts, we can really start cutting back on this emergency work stuff that's going on. So there's a few ways we've got to do it. There's a bit of roading stuff that needs to be done through the essentially the general roading program, upgrading culverts, stopping water from discharging over downslopes. That's kind of happening as part of it, the program anyway. The trick is to get those trees in. That's the long-term win game, and we can't actually, that's a hard to model because it takes a bit of time for trees to grow, obviously. The blue area is what would be beneficial in a broader sense to the road. It doesn't have like the direct, yes, it's going to stop things, but the view is if we can divert some of that water away from into specific areas where we've got our culvert assets, we can control the, I suppose, the game a bit more than what we're currently doing. And we've done this on one of the sites further towards Weber on the Route 52 project, where we've actually gone up into the banks, channeled some water away from it. And one of the historical issues where we were always getting road slumping, it's slowed right down because we've got to the water, we've diverted it, we've cut it away, and we've got it actually to the right place. So the view is if we can go, we can do the red stuff relatively well in the road reserve. The bit on the north, on the top part of the page, that's the, you need landowner buy-in because that's in their property. And then the stuff on the blue is, that's going to, that's the, I suppose, the hard sell from a budget point of view in terms of making sure everything's aligning, because it needs a bit of investment for all parties to go and do it. So you can break the project down into, I suppose, high risk, medium risk, low risk land types, with the view that if we target the red stuff first and foremost, that's got the best bang for buck for the road. The blue stuff has got a bit of beneficial to the road, but it's a bit hard to, you can't 100% guarantee it's going to work. So further break that down. So roadside only. That's the general work we do as part of our roading programs. So on that site in particular, it's got a culvert that was undersized. It was feeding into that dropout that was, and the water was discharging uncontrolled. We've moved the culvert, we've put a culvert sock and a flume on it, and it stopped the immediate erosion. And then further down the road, we've got a vulnerable area where water is, if a slip comes down off one side, blocks the water table, water goes across the road onto downslope, and then it causes the dropout. So we get a lot of that stuff going on. So if we can, within the roading corridor, we can do some, we can take some pretty easy steps to address that. And that's part of the low cost low risk program. There's about 800,000 in the budget for that to be able to start doing some of these low cost treatments across the area. And for example, at the bottom little left, bottom right little spot, if we go and put a $4,000 hot mix bund, which is a little bund about that big, and we can channel the water away from that area, we can protect that downslope. And you think going back to that initial cut to fill method, or a lot of those roads were in that, got that cut to fill scenario going on, that's what's causing the problems. We can, if we can get the water out of it, we can reduce the risk of those things happening. So scenario 2, this is where the broader thought process comes in. It's got a little bit more roading investment because we're doing some planting of the species that Horizons wouldn't fund within the roadside. The reason we've got specific species is because we don't want big trees growing along the roadside, so smaller manuka and the likes that are easy to maintain, because we don't want to create more maintenance burden on vegetation management, hence the whole pine trees conversation. So there's a little bit more investment from the council side of things. The key kicker for this one is then we've been able to get Horizons on board in terms of the Salui program to bring their investment into it. So they will support 70% of the planting of these slopes if it has benefit to infrastructure, and road is considered infrastructure. So they will fund 70% of this tree planting for the program. No, it won't be everything, because I've got, obviously they've got to deal with other parties as well in bits and pieces, but essentially they're on board in terms of doing the planting. And then just the other day, we've got confirmation that MSD will also put in $100,000 to this financial year to support the program as well. So Horizons, MSD, and then just our general roading side of things, you get that all together, and we can start, I believe, reducing the impact of these storms in the district going forward. Start with the small stuff, get some plants in these areas which used to be vegetated, because where we have trees, you can see we don't generally have issues. And then the broader side of things, you add the blue bit into it. This is where I suppose the next level of, I suppose, council investment is getting up onto those top slopes and starting to cut some tracks through it and create some water diversion channels to get the water actually away from the whole slope, which then slows down the whole degradation of it. That's a little bit more of a step, and if we were going down that route, we need further funding assistance from NZTA as a part of a low cost, low risk program or a resilience program on the back of Cyclone Gabriel. So, yeah. Then the next side of it is we've talked about carbon credits from it. As a sell for the landowner, if we've got people who aren't quite in line with it, we've got the, I suppose, the opportunity to promote the carbon side of it as well to get the thing across the line. So in that instance, if and a lot of I suppose landowners are already doing this anyway on their own backs, they're converting into carbon farming. If we can control what type of species are there and just get a bit more sort of input into it, when they're doing that, we can even if they're pines and they're doing carbon credit pine planting, if we can get in there early and do some drainage before they plant the pines, when they harvest them in 30 years, and because that's generally what happens, you get a pine plantation harvested, we get a whole bunch of dropouts at the end of it. So if we can get in there early, I suppose pre-plan it with them, we can get some benefits in 30 years time as well. Some of that would take a little bit more investment from the landowner. For example, if they wanted to get the full whack of it, they would have to plant fence off that area, and that cost would sit with the essentially the landowner in this scenario. Trying to think what I've got next.
But before you move off that, Matt, if you would mind, we'll have to ask questions then on later. Andrew, you're almost touched on it with the landowner, because what you're proposing there, I'm just trying to think what Sean might have had there. The red area, was he running stock on there? I mean, you're looking at a change of land use from pastoral to planted. So even though, you know, the dollars show no impact on the landowner, the only credit or the only investment would be in fencing and or obtaining the carbon credits. I mean, does he not want his stock to be running on there?
More money out of Beleka, but
Well, I mean, it looks really good as a table like that. But what I guess I'm trying to think is we've got all these road reserves, but without the cooperation and the collaboration of these private landowners, it could be an absolute jigsaw puzzle of what you managed to achieve. The only second question, you didn't mention what the stakeholders were when it came to this overall project. Is the local catchment group one of those stakeholders, Andrew? Because they're very active out there. I know you talked about Sluey, so that obviously fed farmers and Horizons, but what about the local catchment group? Because they're...
So I'll touch on the first point around the loss of, I suppose, productive land, essentially.
Yeah.
The Sluey program, essentially, these farmers have signed up to the Sluey program already, and you look at what the pole planting looks like, they don't actually lose their grazable land. We would ideally like a bit more dense planting in these areas, and that's why if you can sell the carbon side of things, credit side of things as well, that's that sweetener on the other side. In this instance, we are planting the top red slope now because we're in the pole planting season and Horizons had some surplus. So that's getting planted now, and that's just being planted in poplar poles, which is no different than the other areas of land that Sean's planting.
Start with the poplar poles.
In regards to the second question?
Oh, the catch, you talked about the stakeholders at the start of your introductions, obviously a working group looking at this. Is a member of the local catchment group part of that?
So as currently, no. We've developed this, I suppose, through the stakeholder group that's been, and it's grown from there essentially. We've got MPI also on board around the carbon farming side of things to provide a bit of advice in that space, because we're not experts essentially. Council's acting as the facilitator to try and bring these people in. What I would think is, I think there's more opportunity while government's got this program. You think about Shane Jones's billion tree fund. It's like, and even what got planted up on that's getting planted up on the hill right now for the new road. There's a whole bunch of this planting going on. If we get a 1/10 of what was planted up on the hill, we'd probably actually get the plants for our what this project is currently looking like. So we're sort of working in a little small group right now because that's what we know and we've been engaged with. And as you broaden it out, you kind of can see other people getting on board. I mean, the
Very
jobs for nature side of things.
Help with the community leadership.
So right now, from a engagement with the farmer side of things, I mean, we've only got we're only dealing with Morgans right now because that was the trial site. But we've got Rural Support Trust basically as the in for farmers, but it's not necessarily done not necessarily the right person because they've got their function side of things. So we've had Simon Hales, I suppose, from a landowner perspective, speaking as a farmer, representing what the farmers' thoughts are. Yeah, well, we do have the catchment group on board then, so yeah.
Because they're very positive people out there in there.
So that's the trial site. That's largely come together. The next step is all those little green, those green lines aren't roads. They are the sloughy areas that align with the roads in the district. And basically that shows the coverage of, I suppose, buy-in from the sloughy program that we have from a farmer point of view. The majority of roads have it. There are obviously bits and pieces, gaps in those green lines. Overlaid on top of that, the red dots are where we've had slips in Cyclone Gabriel and dropouts in Cyclone Gabriel. So you can see the I suppose the scope that's there. Not all those sites obviously will be right for what we're planning. What we need to do now is actually start drilling down there because that's too much to go and look at as a sense. And I suppose the next part of this project is to actually start scoping that out and actually understanding what type of topography their land is, what opportunities for actually stopping. I mean, just because you can't just plant everywhere because sometimes you plant there and then the plants will end up down the hill if you get a big storm. So we've got to get it right. There's a bit more work in that space to do. And that's where I suppose the next step in terms of additional support funding is required, which we've got an application in. Can't remember the entity right now to actually see if we can get that support so we're not burdening the roading budgets and the council budgets because that's also 100% subsidised through the resilient stuff that's going on through the recovery side of things. But essentially, yeah, that's, I suppose, in the nutshell, big nutshell, what the idea of the land stability project is. And yeah, keen to.
The project's great, Andrew. I'm just trying to link so that you've used the Cyclone Gabrielle resilience and recovery funding to get to this point, but the property that you've got, whilst it was impacted with the cyclone, the area that you're working with is actually 2020. How is that? Was there a cyclone area that could have been used, or was that just based because you had that good data?
Right. Yes. So within our system, we've got basically all the data from where dropouts are occurring. We've got slips mapped out in RAM for all the work that's been done. So I say that's kind of, you add on top of that, the whole road will basically become a red line. So we're trying to, I suppose, look at that data and actually just understand. I mean, we kind of know where these areas are anyway, and you could go around a supervisor and say, oh, this area, this area, this area, this area, but you could pick it out like that. But that doesn't give us you need a strategic approach because we can't be burdening our existing staff with identifying this work. If we can scale them down and sort of just, it's a bit like the, I suppose the work we're doing with the economic growth side of things. So like if we can target the conversation rather than just talking about where all the no exit bridges are, come up with a strategy for actually targeting those conversations. That's what I've got back in the office with the Lee Ransom's working on right now. Is she's pulling bits and pieces of data together and just trying to collate it so we can understand it, and then we can start building that decision making. But the one thing that we've got in a bit of gold we've got sitting in the office right now is Ray Cannon and his amazing spreadsheet he's got emergency works details going back to like 1950 sitting in a spreadsheet. If we can get that converted into actually usable data, it basically just kind of helps us sell the conversation. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I was just concerned, if that is, the direct link to the cyclone, if they were comfortable with that funding.
So this program, the sloughy side of things, that's funded for, I believe, another 4 years. So that's not connected. That's just another program that was pre-existing cyclone. The MSD program that we've got for 1 year. So essentially that would be trying to set up for next essentially planting season. would start preparing, getting the data ready so we can get the polls basically grown and get Horizons buy into it. Beyond that would be trying to generate more conversations, the likes of the Mayor's Task Force, the Jobs and Bits and Pieces, and all those other little programs that sit around to try and keep it running. Because I don't see this as probably just a one-off little thing. I see this as a bit of a ongoing thing that you'd end up promoting to more of central government and the NZTA, because if you can get the proof is there. It's just getting people on board with it in terms of actually showing them the benefits is the question. Not really.
Councillors,
Any other questions on Andrew's rating recovery 7.2? No. Thanks very much, Andrew. It was watch this project with great interest, won't we?
Well,
Would like a mover and a seconder for 7.2. Councillor Sharon, Councillor Naima, all in favour? Thanks very much, Andrew.
Well, thanks to Mitch as well.
And Brian, so you're in charge of 7.3, and Mitch?
Yeah.
Or hands. So should we take the report as read, and do you just any comments, and we'll ask questions?
Thank you, Chair Kerry. That the only thing I'll add is that just further to the planning day that's mentioned in the report that we do have Sandra James facilitating that, and then she will pull the plan together to look at the next 12 months in terms of how we move forward. And part of that and those discussions we'll have next Tuesday, we'll be looking at in terms of council's exit, in terms of out of recovery, but it doesn't mean there's no recovery. Roading and Rural Support Trust and other partners potentially will continue, but I guess it's from an official civil defence side of things when council does exit out of that. So that will be part of that planning day. It is only for 6 hours, so we're trying to cover a lot through that day. There's lots to discuss, and there are our wider partners also, including iwi and finance.
So for questions, Councillor Sharon and Councillor Peet.
Thanks, Kerry. I have a couple of questions related to the item number 6, the community hub expansions, which is fantastic. I have a question though that was raised out at Pongaroa. All these fantastic little generators we're putting in all around the place, who owns them, and therefore who's responsible for maintenance, depreciation, replacement, training? And I know you're going to look to someone at the back of the room for that answer, but as you so nicely said, Brian, for council to get out of doing recovery and ensuring these communities are resilient, the reason I'm asking this question, if for instance the community owned the generator and they were then able to take more responsibility for keeping it going, doing all the training, and knowing that in the future, when push comes to shove, some of these entities may well have the funding to replace those rather than keep coming back to council. So it is a two-pronged question. It's great we're putting these things in, but do we own them? Are they sitting in Raj's magic depreciation jar, or are we handing it over? The second question is, what is going to happen at Akatio now that Powerco have so generously offered to put in a generator at the, and I'm asking really awkward questions I can see from the eyes.
I can answer the first. So for majority of those community hubs, the generators are owned by the communities. They have actually signed a document which says that they accept the responsibility of those and the maintenance of those and the security of those, which is all been filed away nice and tidily. Just at the end, Pongaroa in that instance has not returned it yet, as we were having those difficulties with that generator and ownership. So that has now been sorted and we have got a solution. But once that has all been tied up in a nice little bow, then we'll be able to get that agreement sorted and signed away.
I think with Ponga in particular, which you're obviously aware, if it's down at the vice, their next 7 years are with Gala or whoever is doing it, and it'll be nice to be able to hand over everything kit and caboodle to the community. So I'm pleased to hear that. And just as he's about to answer the question, he goes.
One, they're getting a generator. My understanding is we did supply them with a generator already for their hall, and it was wired in. So, yeah, I guess PowerCo will be supplying a surplus to requirements generator. Yeah, I guess that's my answer. Yeah, I get so.
It's wide facility.
Back a question for you. Sorry, does anyone of PowerCo were aware there was a generator there?
Very good question, but
We know that Pete is always in talks with them, and he has been across this community hub project from the beginning. So, yeah, I'd
my
probably.
biggest concern was who owns these and is responsible, but you've answered that one, but yeah.
The only generators that we own is from another fund that we received, and it is the same generators that we supplied to the community hubs, and they are deployable, which will be, we're receiving them at the end of August, and they will be stored at council in the sort of fence shed, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just in relation to item 9 with Horizons. So firstly, I attended a community function at Herbertville where they were really grateful for the community hub and the gear that they had received. But if I got it once, I got it 10 times. And that is the frustration still remains at Herbertville in regards to the Horizons Regional Council and trees not being removed and the risk that was still there, but also, the risk to the campground going forward. So it was something I was going to raise in the strategy day, but I thought they needed to hear that, that's been, that their complaint has been heard and they still don't feel that there's been action on that.
Thank you. I can absolutely bring that up with the team and pass it on. No worries.
Brian, Mitchell, any other questions, councillors? We have a mover and a second for a recommendation. Councillor Sharon. Councillor Steve, all in favour? Thank you. Yeah. Thanks very much, Mitch. Right, coming along. Right, capital portfolio, all yours. Welcome this afternoon. Sorry, welcome this afternoon. We will read the report, but I'll just let you go through the sheets and anything to add before I through the sheets?
Thank you, Chair, Mayor Tracy, councillors, ladies and gents. The capital portfolio report, as you can see, there's a few pieces in there in relation to the graphs, as well as you'll note the budgets as well on some of the project sheets as well. So that's all been part of that one, the transition of our software as we've gone through it. So I did make mention of it in the last couple of committees, but it's just another highlight there for that. I'm happy to step through some of the project updates, so if you'd like to, at 7.
We'll step through those and then we'll, any questions at the end, Mike? Oh, well, I'll go sheet by sheet, then any other questions we'll bring up at the end, councillors. That's okay. Project updates. I'll just go, you can see, so item 7, project updates, councillors. Councillor Sharon.
Where you going?
Sorry, can you be Tracy? Ladies first.
It's to me, Tracy, isn't it?
Hey, Tracy.
Mike, just on the district wastewater and infiltration, and I know, and it's, it's good to see that you've got the comms there and ready to be reviewed, but I think that one there will be quite critical within the community to understand what's happening and what the potentials are. That comms plan will you be working through that with the likes of the Dennybeck Community Board, keeping them up to speed on that? Can we have a look at that comms plan or engagement plan just through that process?
Sorry, Metro, it's just through your chair. Are we on the district wastewater infiltration inflow? Yep, okay, so that project sheet, yeah, so the comms plan there is in draft. One of the parts of that project, as you see as well, so we've just gone through the tender evaluation, which has actually been really good. On that one as well, we actually had, from my recollection anyway, one of the first times we've had Erie as well on the panel to assist us with the selection of that across the district for this project, which is really cool. We're looking at starting in Eka Tahuna. That'll be the first bit. Once we've sort of finalised all of those sort of dates, and part of that with the contract negotiation will be when we can finalise, when we actually go to these different communities to actually engage with them. But it is definitely on the radar for the Eka Tahuna Community Board. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't mind sharing a draft of the comms plan, but yeah, but we've been working on that with our communications team as well.
So Sharon and then Councillor Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Kerry.
I want to understand a little bit around the telemetry and SCADA project sheet. So phase one, according to the timeline, has finished. So two questions around that. In the orange risk box, you've identified there's an extra cost for physical separation of the main servers. And I don't know if that was actually included in the approved budget, but the question I have is we actually only spent 66,000 on phase one, even though we'd approved 234,000. And Raj is getting excited because he knows what I'm going to ask next. Is the savings that happen in phase one, are we going to bring those over into, well, we're not allowed into phase two? Me and my carryovers and my forwards. Given that we've saved, we didn't spend everything that we budgeted for, are we going to bring that into phase two or?
So for the SCADA and telemetry phase one into phase two there. So the phase one piece has been, if we do have any in there, I'll look to confirm the carry forward, but from memory, it is in there as part of it. But the year one of the LTP did account for a couple of budget lines in there for SCADA and telemetry, both in water and wastewater, and that was based off the initial plans that had been presented. It's only through doing the risk workshop that we identified that physical separation of a server is required.
Yeah, physical. So where is the main server? What do we need to physically separate?
That was in the, and I'm happy for anybody to correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking through it recently, and one of the parts was that some of it was in Paihia, so then we're looking at bringing some of it into Dennybeck and to stop that from happening again. But that means that we need like another server blade, which is quite expensive, but it is something that we'd look to incorporate in as a multi-year rollout, especially for this phase two. We'll be looking at doing it over time, so we'll still be in time for like an annual plan review as well as the future budgets. But again, we just need to look at which parts are critical in this. So that's why phase two is also included in there, and this will be the last one from phase one.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Peter.
Gary, just going back to the district wastewater infiltration one, it's just I was just reading through it, and I see you use the word vendor. TDC have carried out the tender evaluation, have chosen a vendor. Is that a sort of a trade term for these sorts of things? I mean, a vendor is a seller. It's right throughout these documents. I'm just curious. That's all.
I don't actually have the answer for that one there. Sorry, Councillor, I'll look into it. Get back to you.
Who's a vendor, a person or company offering something for sale, especially a trade industry, and telling them ice cream vendor.
It is commonly used across London, I know we've used it. The council talk about vehicles that is providing us. That service.
Could also be that we were initially looking for a consultant or a contractor, but actually this, I think the one we've landed on is going to do both. So it may be just using that word instead of using a supplier, and meaning the same thing, I'm guessing.
Councillors, we seem to be just dodging through all the sheets, which is okay. Yep, so just a question of mine then, Mike, to, or perhaps to Hamish, just the Dannevirke water supply fluoridation, which has reached the end of its costings, and we've got a zero budget, but I was just wondering about the land acquisition part. I think that came up at our last meeting. But I think we had to make land acquisitions for other purposes too, didn't we? So there's no more money to be concerned with this project. That's right.
And land acquisition part of that as well, it came under the impounded supply works, Dannevirke Water in general. So that part there was being managed by Peter Wimser. Again, though, for our delivery of the material. And the other part of that as well is actually they've downsized the truck for the delivery. So it'll work even easier. So
Such a good turnaround.
so that's the one that we're currently insisting on.
Quick question then, so we're at everything's implemented, it's now just testing and working through the electronics, and at some stage we'll decide on turning it on, will we?
80% of the commissioning can be done. We're just putting water through. We'll wait out until the final stage before we flip the switch to the last 3%.
Thank you. Here in the council.
Not too sure what sheet we're up to, but can I go on to Northwood Water Treatment Plant? So just wondering, because I see one of the risks is that Tara Alliance and Downer don't have any capacity for the flushing program. Because we've got to get someone else, and it's probably out of the district. Is that going to put us over budget? You know?
Note that the forecasting hasn't come through on here either. So again, this is just part of our system turnover. So I will work through that. But at the moment, we know that neither have capacity to assist with that. So we're currently working through a bit of procurement to actually look at that flushing program, because that is the next part that we need to do. So, but I can answer that. I'll be able to answer the budget one more closely in the next one.
Any further? Councillors? Looks like we're all happy at this stage. Thank you very much, Mike. We would
Move in a second for the Michael's report. Councillor Aaron, Councillor Peter, all in favour? Against, carried. Thanks very much, Mike. Oh, well, thank you very much, councillors. That brings us to the end of the formal meeting. So we'll declare the meeting closed, and we will have 15 minutes break, Peter, would that suit? So if we're back here at 3:05, that'll be great. Thank you.